technology, engineering, and mathematics. I think every fintech has some element of that. And so I really want to cover a little bit about what MPOWER is doing and really in the context of where we see the future of funding. You probably have seen this. Achalek, I love what he talks about. He said this at the World Economic Forum, that the future of Africa is actually human talent. I'm a firm believer of that, and the numbers speak for themselves. 1.7 billion people are from the Africa continent, and by 2030, 1 in 4 of us will be from Africa. These are statistics that cannot lie, and therefore we see tremendous potential for the Africa continent when it comes to human talent. And for this reason, MPOWER as a business has seen this incredible opportunity to help promising students who are looking to study in the US and Canada. So MPOWER Financing, for those who are not familiar with the company, we're a 10-year-old fintech, and we've built a very robust lending platform that facilitates more than 200 nationalities to be able to access up to $100,000 loan to study in the US and Canada. What's more remarkable about the business, and you'll see here $4 billion worth of loans, is that the growth is coming from India and Africa. I represent the Africa ecosystem, so I spent a lot of time this year. We've seen this tremendous growth of students coming from the Africa continent, looking to study at the top schools in the US and Canada. And so for us, the human talent aspect is so critical for the growth of the business. And what I love about what we do is we talk about financial inclusion. And what's remarkable is despite all we're doing within the ecosystem around financial inclusion, we still have 95 million people in Africa that don't have a traditional bank account. Now, I know there's several institutions in the fintech and banking world that are trying to solve that problem. I look at the financial inclusion from a very different perspective, which is that you've got a student like Nigel who studied, he's from Zimbabwe, he studied at George Washington University, currently works as a technology consultant at Deloitte. He never would have had the opportunity because he was financially excluded. He wouldn't be able to access a $100,000 loan to go to one of the top schools in the US. And so I always like to preface that financial inclusion is critical, especially for the young population. And again, more importantly, for some of our Chevron scholars who appreciate the value of education. Another interesting point is that think about living in Lagos or Accra. I'm from Zimbabwe. We still have a challenge with addressing systems. So the traditional way in which lending is done in the US and Canada, you can literally pull up your laptop and put a zip code and it will tell you the address. We know the challenges in Africa. 75% of countries do not have any good, robust addressing system. So these are the dynamics that a company like MPOWER continues to look at in terms of how we look at our model. Another interesting thing is traditional lending models. You will find that especially across sub-Saharan Africa, only 11% of the population has any credit history. Or any data that allows us to make very informed lending decisions. So one of the things that MPOWER has done is to really look at an ecosystem where we can lend looking at alternative data. And so I'll talk a little bit about our model, but this was really important as we were building the businesses. What can we do to really drive a really promising student who's looking to study to get a $100,000 loan without traditional lending models? So the MPOWER loan itself, I talked about the $100,000 loan. We, on average, across our Africa ecosystem, provide about a $40,000 loan. And this loan covers your educational related expenses, your housing, your meals, your tuition. But more importantly, we see our graduates coming out of university at a master's level, making easily a six-figure income. And this is why STEM is very, very important. So I'll talk a little bit about why STEM is critical, but more importantly, you can see from sort of the slide here that I'm talking about the average salary level. Some of these salary levels can actually get up to 150 to 250K, depending on some of those skill sets. We are seeing this in specific disciplines like data science is very, very key. Cybersecurity, we're seeing machine learning, AI. I mean, a lot of those skill sets are in huge demand across the globe. So where do Empower students end up? So this year we'll probably see about 15,000 students who would have had access to an Empower loan, but they end up at incredible companies across the world. They end up at Amazon, AWS, Meta, Microsoft. But this just gives you a snapshot of the type of companies we are seeing that are hiring, the students that are coming from Empower. So that gives you a good sort of confidence level in terms of the skill sets that we're seeing across some of the companies that are hiring. So why STEM? So we've got a lot of STEM Chevron students. So this is just a snapshot of the US, right? Despite all the tech layoffs that have been talked about, the reality, if you just look at the US, is that STEM occupations are growing at a 10.8% annual growth rate, right? And you are seeing this whether it's in the EV industry, where you're looking at cybersecurity, you're looking at AI. I mean, you can name it. The reality is that there is still significant upside in students. And I'm always saying this to our African students is that we love accounting, we love MBA programs, but also keep in mind where is the future? And the future for us is in STEM jobs because that's where the opportunities are. Just another interesting point. I know I talked a lot about the US, but if you look at Canada, there'll be 95,000 engineers that will retire by 2030. Right. So all of those jobs need to be filled. Now, whether you're an African who decides you want to go and study in the US and Canada, go back to your home country, the reality we're seeing here is that in markets like the US and Canada, those jobs are there. We're seeing significant challenges in countries like Germany, Japan. All of these countries are looking for these skill sets that are STEM focused. So I think at this point in time, I really wanted to leave it up to some questions, but let me close by saying this. We have seen, and if you look at markets like India, India is a classic case of a very deliberate strategy to build an ecosystem for students who are ready for the 21st century, right? And you just have to look at the CEOs that run Fortune 500 companies in the US. What's interesting is many of them did their undergraduate degrees in India, in their home countries, right? And so I see this sort of really parity with Africa is that we have an opportunity to drive STEM occupations, drive STEM education, drive opportunities for students to get funded. I went to school in the US. I wish there was a facility like Empower back then, but now it is there. And so one of the key things I would like to close on so we can really open up for some questions is that we are seeing a massive opportunity for students who want to study STEM jobs, STEM degrees, want to be able to take up STEM jobs, whether it's in the US and Canada, and really fill this huge void that that needs to be filled when you look at the opportunities that exist in the US and Canada. Now, we focus on the US and Canada because when you look at our model, we actually look at what we call future income. So we've built our own credit algorithm that looks at about 1,000 data points. But one of the key data points is what we call future income. So we're looking at students who are graduating who we know will earn a six-figure income. We know they can repay their loan. That is sort of how the model works. And we've been very lucky because even when you look at sort of non-performing loan books, we are well below the average of a traditional bank. And that is because we're sitting on a ton of data. And this data really allows us to get better at looking at alternative data models of how we can lend to students in a way when you look at markets where some people simply don't have credit scores. So we do have students, by the way, who do get loans from us who have no credit score at all. So we've had to find a way to be able to kind of work the model so that we can look at all of the alternative data sources. But with that, I've put a QR code. So if there are any students or any prospective students who are looking to study in the US and Canada, you can just scan this QR code and it will take you to a landing page. on average, most of our students are probably sitting between the ages of 21 and 31. They've done their undergraduate degree at University of Lagos, or any of the African institutions, and now they're thinking, okay, what's next? We have some students on the MBA side who might have done their undergraduate degree at home country, and they've decided to work, 3, 4 years, and now they're thinking about the future. And you'll see I really focused on STEM. My last point really about STEM is that we have seen the top 25 schools in the US who've actually taken their MBA programs and made them a STEM curriculum. Why? Because if you start to look at even business jobs, if you're coming out with a master's degree in finance, for example, a lot of the work you'll do will be data related. I spend a lot of time in my existing job looking at data and data analytics, and that is so critical for the skill sets that companies are looking for. So you'll find the top 25 universities, especially in the US, all have STEM designated programs. So if I decided today, for example, to do an MBA in fintech from NYU, that is actually designated as a STEM degree. And so we've seen a huge shift even within the educational ecosystem and higher education institutions that are recognizing this merging between traditional STEM subjects, and MBA programs. So with that, thank you for the opportunity to just have an interaction with you. I do want to make this a little more interactive. So if anyone has any questions about what I've covered, or anything outside of what I've covered, I'm happy to address any questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Munya. We're ready here to take Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, please raise your hand so we can pass you the mic.
Thank you very much, Munya, for that interesting presentation, in particular focused on our students who are here from Egypt, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya because of the support from Chevron. Typically, a loan will be collateralized. So can you explain how you are, controlling risk, of default? What do you expect from the students? I mean, do you expect some sort of deposit initially, or everything is kind of future-proofed with their future income? Can you explain a little bit more on that? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. I probably missed a very critical part when I was talking about the traditional lending models. I think we all understand that if I went to a bank today, so I go to KCB, and this is no disrespect to any bank. I really love African banks, EcoBank, whatever bank it is. And you say you want $100,000 loan. They will probably ask you for collateral. They'll probably ask you for title deeds. And that's fine. That's the traditional lending model. The other thing they may ask you for is a cosigner. So they'll ask that, okay, maybe my parent, my guardian will need to sign on my behalf. It was critical when MPOWER was building its algorithm to exclude those two factors. So if you are looking at an MPOWER loan, we will not ask you for collateral, nor will we ask you for a cosigner. So how do we manage the risk? This goes back to our ability over the past 10 years to be better at data, to start to collect data around the program somebody's going to study, the university they're going to study, the likelihood that they're going to get a job, right? We don't guarantee jobs, but what we do is ensure that a student is studying in a discipline that guarantees that from the career path they have decided, they have an opportunity really to study abroad. And I typically, when I'm talking to students, give the example of Adina, who's living in Addis. She's making $4,000 a year as a junior data analyst. She applies for a master's in computer science from an MPOWER school. She's coming out, and you're seeing that $89,000. It's an ROI equation, right? Which is that you're investing for the future. You can pay that loan back. It's a 10-year fixed loan. We're seeing students paying that loan back in 5 years. So for us, the risk factor really comes from being better at understanding the profile of the students that we're looking at to fund, but more importantly, the the success rate of students coming out of the program once they've graduated from a good school in the US and Canada, and then looking at the STEM occupations, as I mentioned, 10.8% growth in STEM occupations just in the US. I'll give you another interesting statistic. If you look at the state of California, there's a shortage of 300,000 nurses. 300,000 nurses. So we're in an ecosystem where Africa's got this huge human talent opportunity. And then you've got another dynamic of demographics in more developed countries where they need good people. And so that's where the model becomes important. So zero collateral, zero co-signers, understanding the profile of the student, ensuring that, again, the part of the model is looking at future income. We want Sarah, we want all of these fantastic students to get an opportunity to study and then graduate and then get a job. And in the US, interestingly enough, they have something called OPT, which is optical training. It's a 3-year window which allows STEM graduates to work in the US to gain experience. We found that to be remarkable for a lot of students. They get to work in the US for as an intern, and a lot of students within that period, because they're just high performing students, end up getting job offers from their employers. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question around how we look at risk.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from right there? All right, give us 1 second to reshift the camera. And you're all set.
Oh, thank you so much. My name is Augustine. I'm a master's student at Kenyatta University, specializing in electronics and instrumentation. From your presentation, I've taken note you're only mentioning of master's program, but I haven't heard of any postgraduate, maybe PhD in such case. Now, also my second question is on do you have any grants for students from like now vulnerable countries or communities? In that case, aside from being loaned or empower. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, a number of really good questions you asked, and I can answer them all simultaneously. So one of the things I always say about PhD programs, there's plenty of funding for PhD programs, especially in the US. When you get to PhD level, I strongly suggest that students, especially master's degree students, if you're doing a master's degree and then you're looking at PhD programs, look at the institution that you are attending. Most students are able to get funding. Case in point, my wife, for example, did a PhD in the US. She was a graduate teaching assistant. There was plenty of money. So our ideal custom profile is not a PhD student. Again, also keep in mind the term of a PhD program tends to be 4 to 7 years. Our sweet spot is your master's degree program. It's for those programs that are 1 to 2 years. If you look at Cornell at one point, it was doing the MBA that was 1 year, right? So just want to answer that PhD question is that PhD students should be looking for grants and scholarships. The other thing that's important, and you're absolutely right, is that we do have scholarships. MPOWER actually has a scholarship page. You can go to MPOWER Financing and look at scholarship programs we run throughout the year. Where we find it to be really interesting for us is that students who might have gotten scholarships, and then they need money for gap funding. So they got into Duke, and Duke is $100,000, and the tuition amount is covered at 80, and they're looking for 20 for gap funding. So that is also where we find us to be an extremely helpful resource for students. So again, scholarships are important. If you can get them, please go ahead and do that. In general, we find that there's simply not enough scholarships globally to meet the demand that we're seeing for university or master's degree programs. So again, yeah, we focus primarily on master's degree programs, but even at the master's degree level, there's just simply not enough scholarships that can fill that master's degree gap. So yeah, if you can get a scholarship, do that. PhD programs, I would always encourage students to pursue the university or some sort of other grant, because there's actually quite a bit of funding available, especially if you're looking at the US. Good question.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Right in front. Can we give her a mic, and then let's position the camera. And I think you're all set. Go for it.
All right. So I was going to ask, you were talking the other time, and then you mentioned students' profile. So I was curious as to, are you talking about the result of the students? So for example, if I don't have like a first class, would I not be opportune to get like a loan from MPOWER, or what do you mean when you say student profile? Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And another good question. So when I talk about profile, so let me just clear up a few things that I might have not mentioned early on, is that we fund master's degree programs, whether it's STEM or not, right? So, but what I wanted to do today is articulate why STEM is important. There are students come to us and they can get, funded for other graduate school programs, but STEM is very critical. Now, whether it's a first class or second class, the critical aspect for us is that you would have received an admissions letter from one of the 400 schools we support, right? So I'm looking, let's just say I've got 3 schools I'm looking at in the US and Canada. I'm looking at Northeastern University. Maybe I'm looking at Harvard, and I'm looking at Stanford, and I want to do a master's degree program. Apply to those schools, right? Get an admissions letter. Once you get an admissions letter, you can come to us. So the QR code I gave you, for example, you can just scan that. We can do a quick eligibility check. So that takes 30 seconds. If you today scan that QR code and you say, I want to attend Stanford and I want to do a master's in electrical engineering, we can come back to you in 30 seconds and let you know whether you're eligible for an MPOWER loan. So that's regardless of whether you're first class or second class or whatever your degree program. So that is really the profile for us, is that the profile really sits in the fact that we're looking for students who are primarily wanting to study a master's degree in the US and Canada. That in itself is a good profile. Now, where we see the most success is for students, and this is why we love what the Chevron is doing for students, is that STEM is so critical. We can maximize on loan amounts for students who are studying STEM because part of the algorithm is looking at future income, and future income dictates, again, the fact that we're seeing much better success rates for students who are studying those degree programs. So hopefully that helps in terms of profile. So it's really about making sure you are a master's degree program, not undergrad. You're looking to study at one of our 400 schools that we support. That is sort of the profile we're ideally looking at.
All right. Thank you so much, Munya. We're done. We're at time for that session. So we'll move on to the next session. Do you have any closing statements, Munya?
No, other than thank you. I wish I could be there. Love to interact with the Chevron scholars. The QR code it's on the presentation. I'm on LinkedIn if anyone wants to reach out to me specifically around MPOWER and how I can help. Again, STEM is the future, Africa is the future. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with all of you students, and I hope you do well in whatever fields you decide. But STEM is exciting, and hopefully we can see more and more African students take up STEM STEM subjects. Thank you.